covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Heilman and Jim Mernier.
Welcoming in fans of the 50-yard fight, this is the Inside the Walls podcast. Zach Heilman in, as always, to kick things off on the latest edition of the Inside the Walls podcast. Today we're bringing you, of course, episode 118, NAL Rebound Week 14 edition, covering the last two most exciting NAL games of this past weeks of action, with some very fascinating results and some storylines that we'll be talking about for both of these contests as well. Also going to give you some news on one of the major players in terms of the NAL scene that was looking for a new home post Fayetteville. He is now has a landing spot, and we'll discuss the home field advantage playoff scenarios that we have kind of broken down and have put together towards the end. But before we get to any of this, of course, I have to bring on my good buddy, co-host, fan, the Adam Schefter of the NAL, as I'm going to keep on referring to more and more. It is Jim Mernier. Come on down.
Yay!
The price is right.
Yeah, the price is wrong. But yeah,
Was the score was right though for you?
Yeah, score was right
on the away trip.
Trip was great. All right, the fan support in Orlando was impressive. That was a good weekend.
Let me just say 10,000 fans. That's the reported attendance is 10,100 ish. Was listed on via the Orlando Predators social media pages. So massive win for any indoor arena team. 10K hitting during the regular season is huge. It's one of the largest attendances in NAL history, by the way. And that's we keep talking about the fan support and kind of growing that, I guess, that little rivalry or Florida connection, and it keeps showing out. It showed out once more. That's another massive crowd between these two competitors at Amway, and it keeps on being like this big event during the season, is the Preds and Sharks either showing up in Jacksonville or showing up in Orlando.
It's a rivalry that has been going on since 2010, when the two brothers at one point owned both franchises. And it was a great event. 10,000 fans, a bunch of Shark fans went down. We had our own two sections. And apparently, if you watched the game and listened to the game, every time you hear the announcer for Orlando say, "Give it up for your defense," I made our guys chant Duval. And I had a random Orlando person stop me and go, "You know, your city or your county's name is very annoying." And I'm like, "Well, that's what we do up in Duval." But it was a good trip. Everyone had a great time from what I can expect. But big win for the Sharks, and a one-sided dominant win for the Sharks. And the atmosphere there was great. A little feisty early in the game.
Yeah, just a tad, a little bit.
That's what you expect when two teams that don't like each other in their history. Even though the historical records don't look like a rivalry based on how many times Jacksonville has beaten Orlando. But it was a great atmosphere, great crowd, and that's something that we expect in Orlando. A beautiful arena, Amway. The Orlando organization puts on a great show. It was a easy in, easy out type of ordeal. They allow a lot of fans on the field after the game, which you don't see in Jacksonville. They limit the people sometimes.
Interesting.
But in Orlando, they just allow everyone in. And it was also pretty cool at the end of the game. The Sharks took a picture with all the Shark fans who made the trip. Two full bus loads. So, yeah, it was about 200 fans traveled via bus. But I think there was a lot more that traveled not by bus down there. So I could say roughly around maybe 1,900 Shark fans made the trip to Orlando for this game. And that's what's cool about these little hops. This is what I wish we see up in West Texas and in San Antonio, even though that's a big travel distance between those two cities, because Texas is a big state, really big state. But it was a great event. It was exciting. Hats off to the Shark organization getting this organized and giving the fans a lunch down there. Giving them free transportation. And it's pretty nice when you get on the bus and you can sleep, except for driving that distance. Of course, I had to do a lot of stuff on the podcast, update a lot of stuff online. But it was a fun trip, exciting trip, and now Orlando comes up to Duval this Saturday night for the third and final matchup of the regular season. Most likely not the final matchup between these two teams this year. So it was a great trip. It was exciting. Met some great people from both sides, and yeah, I should do it more often. But it was a good. I met Bane. Bane's in good spirits.
There you go.
Bane does no longer have the neck brace. He's standing up. He's walking
Good
around.
progress.
So
Nice.
it feels good. He looks good. He joked with me about his return, and I was like, just let's wait till next year type of thing. But his spirits are good, and it was a good energy, good vibe, and of course the game was good. And honestly, by just watching over that game, quick observation before we break it down later, I Castronova is the front runner MVP right now. I don't know who else can beat the man. The guy again, near 70%, 80% completion rating, and him, Tamori and Terry, Cam Solomon, and Devin Wilson were just torching Orlando secondary all night. It was a great performance by San, and of course, you look on the other side. Darius Prince was doing Darius Prince type of things all night. Fortunately, it didn't go his way this time around, but it was a great game, great atmosphere. I want to tip the hat. I wish I had a hat on; would be a lot better. Tip the hat to John Chaney, Nate Starling, and the Preds organization for presenting that game. Great activities, and the crowd was into it as much as they can for a team that so lopsided in score. But it was a great environment. It's a great arena, football arena, beautiful arena in Amway.
Let's save a little more of the breakdown and analysis here for just a little later in the show because I do have so much more to talk about this game. I'm glad though you're giving the atmosphere, absolutely. Because I mean, it's the thing is like we talk every time we discuss arena football. It's so much different when you go in person than it is when you watch on the YouTube streams. I mean, and these broadcasters do a great job trying to give that intensity and show off that intensity, but it's a different game when you go in person. I actually saw during this contest with Preds and Sharks, it was a boyfriend girlfriend couple. I think it was the boyfriend was posting saying, "My first ever arena game I took my girlfriend to. She's hooked. She wants to come to every single one now." And that happens every time. I have never found a person that I have said or have brought to an arena football game in the past that I've gotten the few times I've gone with folks to that has said, "Yeah, no, I dislike this." It's almost, I would say I have a 100% success rate so far in converting people to say, "This is freaking cool." And I'm like, yeah, it is pretty damn cool. You should check it out more if you're in the area. So, yeah, I love that. And then there's probably some new fans down there in Orlando last night that maybe got a bit of an experience with that. And I always am glad to see it. Like it's growing year over year. Like Orlando is the perfect little, here's what happens when you get a community-led organization that sticks to it and keeps on chipping away at its community and being ingrained in its community over the longer haul. And it's reaping rewards. Last few seasons, it's starting to reap those rewards post-pandemic, change in ownership, because that 2019, no one's not going to lie to you, that was rough, but changes were made and have been right ever since. Last 3 years, they have ever since been good ownership, good leadership, good community engagement, and getting people back in the arena to check out their Predators again. So can't say that enough.
And of course, it's one of the original founding members of the game itself. It has a rich tradition in Orlando, and it's nice to see that fan base come back. And the jungle is not the jungle with 3,000 fans. It's the jungle when it's 10,000 plus. Just like the Shark Tank is not the Shark Tank until it's about 7,000 plus. But yeah, these are two organizations that have history in the game. And when these two organizations are good and they're playing each other, you're going to have some good football between these two. Because when these two teams are going all cylinders, you have some fireworks happening, and especially in this rivalry right now, but in the game itself.
Yeah. Speaking of some fireworks, let's talk about some news pieces as we always do with our Rebound episode. So not much this week, honestly. It's been pretty light. Obviously, last week we talked about, rumblings of rumors. Expansion-wise, nothing new on that front. Can't really give you much there. We can talk about free agency signings because if there's one thing you know about in indoor arena football, transactions kind of go late in the year. This is the time of the year you see kind of the last ditch efforts to stock up on weapons, especially if you're a playoff team trying to make that final push, you're trying to solidify your seeding. This is the time of year to do that. It happens every year in the NAL. Everybody talks about it every single year, for one circumstance, one way or another, and this is no exception. Yes, this is a little bit different given that it was from a previous team, but still a massive splash. Kendrick Ings, people were wondering after last week when he showed up on the Cobras broadcast, hey, is he still playing? Where's he going to go? He had a great commentary on that broadcast as well. Really loved it when they were talking about West Texas. So maybe there's a commentary career in his future if he wants to over there. But in the meantime, he still wants to play. And sure enough, on the transaction wire, he's heading on down to San Antone to be one of those key receiving cogs, maybe returning cogs in terms of return men for the Gunslingers. I mean, Jim, we can talk all day about this, but obviously I'll give you my quick things, and you definitely lay down more details here. Kendrick Ings, versatile, not only receiver in terms of a speedster, great return man, shifty, also plays very good as a defensive back, underrated DB. We've seen last 2 seasons. Someone that I think really, if you're looking at the depth of the Gunslingers in terms of both sides of the ball, he's just a great addition overall to add to both the units in the secondary or in your receiving core. I think in terms of return game, if you find a way to get him in, not only do you have Khalil Rashad, but you can split it up where you can have one side Khalil, one side Kendrick, and then you have 2 deadly return men. You are arguably maybe sacrificing a blocker, but if Khalil is like anything I've seen, or if Kendrick is anything I've seen, they'll chip in. They are guys that are not afraid to get dirty. So not only are you enhancing your special teams a bit, but I mean, whoever's going to be playing QB this week, when we talk game day, they at least get another extremely reliable receiver that knows his assignment and will help out his QB when needed. Awesome addition. I'm just glad to see him playing again too. Like he just, I know the circumstances suck with how Fayetteville went down, but like he was one of those guys I'm like, where's he going to go? Because he's going to land somewhere. Once we saw Trey Long, Walter Thomas, he was one of those guys that was going to be next, and I'm glad that he's back in it for at least the rest of the year.
He's one of the most explosive receivers in the game, period. If it's his time as Carolina, his time as Fayetteville, his time in the other arena leagues. He's one of the most dynamic receivers in the game. We've had him on the show multiple times. We were live with him in practice before our championship game last year. We had him on a road trip this year to, I think he was going to Maryland or something this year. Talk about Fayetteville. He's one of the most genuine guys in the league who is very open. You ask him a question, he'll answer any of your questions. But San Antonio is just not getting a weapon. They're getting a good culture guy. He's a individual that's going to expect excellence around him. He's one of the marquee players in the game. He's always on either someone's NAL first team ballot, or he's an offensive player of the year type of caliber guy, or a special teams guy throughout the years in the NAL. He's going to be a dynamic piece in San Antonio for their playoff run, especially the last couple of weeks and that first round playoff game or the championship game. He will help an Arvell Nelson. He will help a Robert Kenton Jr. That's the type of, he made Cato look very impressive up in Fayetteville.
Oh, yeah.
And he was also the go-to guy for Bain and Malik Henry in Orlando, or excuse me, not Orlando, in Carolina.
There you go.
So
yes.
I got Cato on the brain going to Orlando.
Oh, I know. It's easy to get caught up because we're talking. There were 2 Carolina teams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get it.
But it's going to be explosive. But I still see Kylie taking more of the returner role still. But I guarantee you, Ings may be still an offensive specialist, but he's not afraid to play Iron Man. He's not afraid to play DB. In a couple of games, I think he even did. I think it was either this year or last year with Carolina. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception and a kick return all in the same game. Like, he's that type of player. He's going to make San Antonio's offense a little bit more explosive, more exciting to watch. The question, and it's going to make defenses who you want to cover: Khalil, Kendrick, Philip Barnett, Reynolds, Who you going to cover on that offense, especially if Arvell or Robert Kent Jr. are on? And San Antonio has a scary offense, and this just boosts that potential of being a better offense, especially going down a stretch, and especially with San Antonio's upcoming 2 games. Kendrick would be a key asset for them to potentially, honestly, try and split, and hopefully something happens to Jacksonville. But they got Carolina in the next 2 weeks, and having Kendrick, who's been with Carolina for many years, could be some of a strategy as well. Kendrick can tell them what's going on over there, especially with the offense, so could help them. But it's going to be interesting. We're down to 4 weeks left in the season, or 3 weeks left in the season.
Yeah, only
It's
three.
going to be a stretch. It's going to be exciting, and I like when Kendrick Kings is playing football. You know that team who he's playing for is going to be explosive, and you know he's going to be in 2 locations. He's going to be either in the far left end zone or the far right end zone, because that's where Kendrick is. He's always scoring somewhere.
Yeah, he'll get his shots. I mean, good. It's a great pickup. I'm more so just happy that I get to see him, or we get to see him play a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And his season doesn't just end on team goes under financially and players disperse. That's a player I definitely wanted to see back on the field at a position where he can get some success.
Mm-hmm.
And San Antonio is definitely it. Obviously, again, we got questions. We'll learn about the QB scenario. I think both will have their own talks, but at least whoever's going to be behind center, they're double, triply sure that they're going to get guys that know their assignments and know how to play the game in these crucial moments. I mean, Gunslingers, that's one thing this year. They're playing no matter what, they're playing playoff football this season. This isn't a team that's rallying from behind and kind of the underdog types. They're one of the top guys in terms of record, and they're going to be fighting to get a home playoff berth, something that's extremely important. As you point out, Jim, you point this stat out every time, and I know some people go, well, it's a statistic, but hey, look, when you have that heavily of a favoritism in terms of history saying home teams in the NAL generally win to get to the playoffs, it's a stat I don't think you can pass up, because you want to at least say, hey, at least I've got and in terms of Gunslingers, I imagine if you get a playoff game, you're going to see even a bigger crowd than usual in there. I get my 5,000, 4,000 fans in the stands, all with their cowbells or their noisemakers, and in a loud Freeman Coliseum that reflects noise well. They're on my side, and I get to home that in. That's a big win. It's like how the Sharks are holding their own destiny right now too. You mean to tell me I can possibly get a home game where I get most likely 8,000 plus for that game, and maybe if I hold out, I can get 10K plus for a championship home game? Sign me up. This is the time to go and get guys like this to kind of solidify those spots. And again, we see with Kendrick Ings this year. 2 years ago, we saw Joe Hills go to the Preds when they were on their own run. Last year, we saw Tommy Grady, but that was credit circumstance of QB. Luckily, that worked out because Grady didn't get hit. Not all the time these are swings in a home run, but this is the type of moves you see from teams that, they're up at the top and they want to be doubly sure they can stay at the top and then make I would think, a more solidified run than saying, hey, don't let the other team out contract you or outbid and get some guys maybe at a last minute if they can. So I know that some folks don't care for it in the NAL or in terms of fandoms. I say it makes things kind of wacky and wild, so I'm all up for it. I watch as a sit back and relax behind the keyboard type of person and see how this all plays out. So this makes things fun for me. I just like to see that signing, because at least it's another big time player that I can say, oh, look, a chess piece has entered the match. It has made things much more puzzling in the Game of Thrones NAL edition.
True. And also, hosting the playoff game, NAL teams are 13-2 at home when they host a playoff game. That's an incredible stat. And if you're San Antonio, you want to get the 2 seed, because that might, if that's as it stands, they're the currently second spot in the standings, even though they're technically tied with the 8-2 record. Let's just say if everything stands like right now, San Antonio's a 2, you want to get that stay at that 2 seed, because that might be a possible chance of avoiding Jacksonville. If you advance and let's say an upset happened or Orlando beat Jackson in the first round, then you're hosting. But you want to guarantee get your home game as a 2 because that gives you a chance to possibly host the championship game. And these next 2 games for San Antonio are going to be crucial. There is a chance, there is still a slim chance, if Carolina wins the next 2, they will have the de facto tiebreaker over San Antonio. But the problem with Carolina, they have one more game after that, and that will be home against Jacksonville. And that Jacksonville game could mean a lot for Jacksonville. At the same time, could mean absolutely nothing for Jacksonville. That's how crucial the next 3 weeks are, because there could be a path where Jacksonville beats Orlando, beats West Texas, wraps up the 1 seed, and then Carolina, and let's say Carolina wins the next 2, and San Antonio's like, oh, we need Jacksonville to beat Carolina for us to get to 2. And then Jacksonville throws out Eddie Brill out there, not Nova, and they don't want to risk Nova getting hurt. Then that's a situation that could possibly happen. That's not out of the question.
That's what the Sharks did it last year. Now, credit, that was to more. They knew at that point, and this they also had Malik Henry in that Sharks Cobras matchup late last season. Both those teams, I mean, Henry was more the legit starter. Bain wasn't ready to go. Tommy Grady was out, so they were riding with Malik, who did a solid job, and I think showed that the reason why he won his job over this year over McCollum was that he showed hints of that last season in his stints under James Fuller's offense. So, but the thing was, in that late season match, and this was for a Sharks team that knew their fate. They rested Arvell Nelson before they went up against Albany. Think about that. So you're absolutely right. That is not out of the question. This might be this might not be NFL heights of league, but don't expect if coaches feel like that they think it's the best way moving forward for their teams to like get their guys healthy and keep them where they're ready to go, that you don't see someone rest a body before these 2 playoff matches. I don't know if it's the best strategy. There is arguments for both. One for being, you're kind of heated up and ready to go. Another one being, well, if my quarterback gets knocked down, like say Sam Castronova, which I hope none of these QBs get knocked out for a year because of a game, like a last minute one or something that's meaningless. But, say it were to happen. I mean, you have to go to Eddie Brill, who's has shown some, but it's not a Sam Castronova. So it all depends. And it's fascinating because, like I said, these 3 weeks you talk about key matchups across the board. This week alone, when we talk about Gunslingers Cobras on game day, I mean, wow, like they haven't played in a while, these 2. And these teams have evolved drastically. I would say more so the Cobras than the Gunslingers since that week 1 matchup. And that was a 2-point affair, different starting QBs, beginning of the season. So you're trying to feel out your rosters in game. Now we're talking like in the nitty gritty, and they play each other back to back to end the year. That's wild. That's a big swing right there. Not to slack anything on the Jacksonville schedule to end the season, but weeks 15 and 16 alone, those are 2 games. I'm like, that's massive, So I'm keeping my eye on the ball with those. But we don't have time to talk about that. We got to get some recaps, man. Let's talk about those Cobras, shall we? Let's talk about how they are 7-4 now, and how, honestly, if it wasn't for Sam Castronova lighting up the scoreboard every week, how about Malik Henry? Once again, continuing to show out as he has been. They go over to the Ector Memorial Coliseum, show out, get a 66 to 35 affair. Once again, Malik Henry showing out as always. Run game comes out as usual for the Cobras. And one thing that I think they capitalized on at the beginning, and something that I'm hoping the Warbirds and Coach Tate Smith maybe stray away from next year. This was something that I know I love. I love Didio Weber as a kicker. I really do. But there were times first half where I really did sit at watching that broadcast and went, Coach Smith, you got to be more aggressive. You can't kick a field goal on 4th and 3 from 3 yards out at your opponent's goal line in a game where you're the 2-9 squad with pretty much, if any last gasp of breath to nothing on the season. You got to go for the touchdowns. That's my own personal opinion, because there were 2 times in the first half, Weber misses a field goal deep. I can kind of understand if you wanted to do that. You don't trust your offense. You at least kind of punt it away, and they were still within a score. But again, 4th and 3 from your own 3-yard line. You're kicking a field goal. You get the deuce on the other side. Okay, I'll add that too. But there's a touchdown there. Take that shot. You got guys that can score TDs. You can't rely just solely on your kicker for points, or you can't always lean on that, because here's the deal. You have a team like the Cobras, or really any of these other teams in the league currently, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, they're going to go for touchdowns. And generally they're going to succeed, because that's how arena football is built. Defense is almost always put at a disadvantage in arena. You should take advantage of that. And I don't think settling for field goals is a good message to send at the end of the season, because you're trying to be that, like, hey, we're that upset kid now. We're trying to mess with the schedule. We're trying to get a feel-good moment to end the year and move our program in the right direction. Don't settle for field goals. Even if you got what is arguably the special teams player of the year, don't settle for field goals. I felt that was a little bit lax. Just something I wanted to start the conversation with on this contest in particular. Otherwise, Cobras outclassed them most of the way. This is a team that is, I think, washed away some of its uglier moments from its road game streak, and is now, last 2 weeks, has been kind of tuning up, hitting its stride. You're seeing confidence boosters. Malik Henry is hitting those pretty over-the-shoulder passes again. He's looking like he's back in the zone, like we saw in that 10-touchdown affair weeks prior. I'm liking where the Cobras are at. They're hitting all the pieces at the right time. Defense is also looking pretty solid, getting pressures, getting pass breakups. It's looking good. I'm going to end with saying, West Texas, just be aggressive, period. There's no reason to, in my eyes, go for the field goals at this point in the season. Just go all out. 4 and outs, do the arena shtick. Field goals almost never happen in our league. They do in the indoor leagues, and it's because they play different ball. That's not how we do it. We aggressively go for the game, for touchdowns in this league. I personally think you let opportunities slide by. That's almost the thing I got from it, because that's how you saw the lead slip away. You saw possessions get lost. West Texas was out of this game before they knew it, once they got into halftime.
Well, you can also say that the reason why they were out of the game is because it was the Malik Henry and the Lance Evans show. The whole entire
that
game.
Was too. I mean, there's no denying that. This is clearly, the Cobras are clearly a better roster and overall unit right now. There's a reason why they play the other 2 top teams close and possibly can still try and sneak in for a 2 seed. So without a shadow of a doubt, they are absolutely the better team here. No questions asked.
When I was watching this game, and the things that popped in my mind were just a standout, the usual people that stood out to me. Adam Smith 53 yards, but Lance Evans had 88. It says he has 2 receiving touchdowns. I think he has 3, if I remember the game correctly. But you look at Malik Henry's stats and Malik Henry's numbers. I don't think he missed a throw. I think there was no incompletions. I think he was almost perfect. Maybe he missed 1 or 2 throws in a game. He played probably one of his best games accurately as a quarterback. He didn't have the same numbers like he did the first time around when they were in West Texas, where he threw for 10 touchdowns.
Right.
But I don't know what's is it the temperature? Is it West Texas? Is it the building? But Malik Henry just roast that building.
Something about snakes and dry desert. It just seems to gel so well.
I don't know what's going on over there. Like, this is the second time that West Texas played Carolina in their own building, and Carolina almost made it a personal all-star game. Like, you had guys on this team just show out throughout the night. And also, we saw Guy Myers. Was it Guy Myers that came in?
Yeah, we got a bit of Guy Myers at the end. Who,
the brother of DJ, who's a fan of the show. He came in. But even though we get Coach Tate, you give Coach a little kind of hatred with the field goals and kicking them, you have to tip your hat to the guy who's kicking them. He's still making them. He's clear-cut the kicker of the year. He made another deuce in this game. I think he made 2 deuces again this game. So I think his total is now like 18 or 19 deuces on the whole season. And he, I don't know what's going on with him, but man, he's on the money, and he is the highlight of West Texas. Now, one of the questions I have, and it's going to be hard for us to find out, is what happened to where, why Shaw started, and then why
Hmm.
did we go to Grady? I wonder if there's like a injury, probably, or there could be something else that's not, it's beyond football that we don't know, that they don't make public. So that's going to be a key issue. But when Shaw started, I knew that they were going to be in trouble because Caroline got the ball right at the beginning of the game, scored instantly, and then West Texas kind of stumbled in their first possession. I was like, it's a sign of going to be a long game. And then in the middle of the game, they got kind of close. And even though that we bashed the kicking, Weber did hit a big field goal at the end of the half. Then they got the deuce coming back, so that was a 5-point swing. But
It
again, field goals, touchdowns. In an arena game, it's almost surrendering a possession. You only kick field goals, like in my opinion, when there's like 20 seconds left on the clock and you need to get points before either a switch into the half or a game-winning field goal. My opinion.
yeah. That's why it's not the fact that the field goals I can live with.
Hmm.
That I'm not like anti field goal in entirely in this sport. Like I'm with you. There's situations like if you feel like you want to at least walk away with it. Say like you are getting a possession back the next half,
Yeah.
and you're right there. It's a fourth down, and you feel like F it. We're close enough in this game. I can chip in three, walk away. That's fine. Well, my thing is like there were two field goals in the first half that come to mind with West Texas, and it's weird. I'm talking like this is so extremely negative with the kicker you have. I'm just talking about game plan and like how you play the NAL game to your betterment and how you see every other coach doing it, and there's a reason why. Even
Hmm.
with like a guy like a TC Stevens or a company or Dylan Barnos in Orlando, you play for TDs in the NAL and in arena football, not like the indoor football leagues, which West Texas has played indoor. That is their origin. They came out of an indoor league, they came into arena. And so you have two of them. One of them is a very deep shot in West Texas territory. It was a missed field goal, which I was actually surprised by given that Weber is that accurate from deep all year long. And it was a return. And I was like, okay, that's fine. That was the beginning of the game. There was their first possession. They kicked one. It was basically brought back by the Cobras. I was like, all right, if defense gets a stop, no big deal. But credit, this is arena football. Odds are you probably aren't going to get the stop.
Hmm.
So that one I was like, whatever, not a big deal. If you don't trust your offense or not, that's fine. The one that gets me, and this is why I'm bringing it up, is because if you are 4th and 3 from your opponent's 3-yard line, you are in the red zone, and you are a 2-9 roster that is trying to get an upset win. You don't kick the field goal there. I know there's points there, and I know you're thinking, well, if I get the field goal and I can get the deuce, like that's fine. But like, I just feel like a better method of aggressiveness there makes more sense, even if you don't convert it. Like the principle of I have a touchdown right there. That's how I look at it. Because the thing is, if you know how this game's played, which the staff I think knows by now how it's going to go, given they played almost a whole season, odds are the Cobras are going to get that ball back and they're going to shove it down your throat next drive. And so you'll be again negatively affected by points, no matter what. You're going to be down points after a possession. So that's my thing. I think it's just, you have that. It's a trust factor too. Trust your guys to get that score. You're right there.
Hmm.
That was more of a deal. I get they have a weapon. I'm just talking if you're like right on the freaking goal line, man, punch that sucker in. Go for it. Why like 3 yards? Take that shot, run it in, make a creative play. You know.
Like I was watching this game, and halfway through the third quarter, I was just saying, you have to make a switch here.
Mm-hmm.
Like Shaw's not doing it. Get Gandy in there at least. When Gandy went in there, we had previous experience in what he did in San Antonio, so he can use his mobility to try and open up the game plan. And Gandy still did come later in the fourth quarter. I just wish that happened a little bit sooner than when the game was actually closer and could have been a factor to flip the game. And when Gandy came in, I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and that's what he does. It's just he's more of a rushing type of quarterback. There was a lot of things I look at West Texas. Like, you got to give credit to Carolina. They slowed down the weapons for West Texas. I don't think we have ever heard Trayvon Schwartz name once that game. And then when you look at the
Yeah.
standings of the receivers, uh, Jalen Wilson had a receiving touchdown and he had 4 receptions for 44 yards. That's about it. That's not winning football. You're not going to win games with one receiver touching 44 yards. In arena football, you need passing threats, again, we don't know what happened with Aware, but you're not going to win games without an explosive offense and going for it on those 4th and 1s and 4th and 2s. Yes, you might lose a possession or two, but if you kick a field goal, yeah, you got the points, but that doesn't guarantee the other team's not going to, turn the ball over. But Carolina did not. They just kept scoring and scoring and scoring. And Carolina's the type of offense that you don't kick a field goal against. That honestly, over the last couple of weeks, you can say that you kicked the field goal against San Antonio, but you go for it against Carolina and Jacksonville because those two offenses in recent games over the last 3 or 4 weeks have shown signs of more explosive offenses.
And I think that's not too bad either. Pick and choose the opponent you're going to do this. Now, to be fair, obviously you can't control that we had two teams get knocked down and out this year. Because, yes, if we were talking the Empire back, and they showed this, of course, their last time the two met, like that Albany Empire, yeah, sure. I would feel fine with field goals because I think that opponent you better match up with to where you can kind of control that game plan.
Mm-hmm.
With a Carolina, with a Jacksonville right now, I just say no. Like, you just can't do that as often. So that's where I'm with you. Like, it's like, yeah, 4th and 2, 4th and 3, especially if it's, again, goal line scenario, 4th and 3. I am calling a pass or run play of some kind, but most likely a pass.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I know it's not the QB I wanted in with Ware, and his whereabouts might be, his unavailability are a little different, but I would still call the pass, or at least call an elaborate run play that opens up a hole or a seam for whoever it is, whether it's Shorts and company, to run it. Actually, there was one play that Jacksonville ran and I thought was brilliant, and I would love to see them run more or teams run more. So they have a jet sweep with Naquan Murray, where he's coming out of motion, he's starting to run through the backfield, and they snap the ball. And instead of going to Murray, it looks like they're going to pitch to Murray, but instead it's a quick handoff to Zach Brown, and then you see Malik Henry fake the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So you can basically, off that play, you can run like a fake inside handoff pitch out, or you can fake the pitch out and give a quick handoff to where you're throwing off defenders. There's actually a few opportunities there I didn't think about until I saw that play happen. It was one of their goal line possessions, and I went, "Wow, man, we need to see this more often." That's some great kind of like variety there. I know Damon Ware last year brought in more like the indoor football run concepts with Shorts, and it worked really well. We haven't seen that since. Credit, I think you have a different setup in Orlando, and I don't see as much of Smith running those concepts as often in West Texas. I think he does have some of it, but he runs more traditional arena run game, and then more kind of plays the game, I guess, in terms of scenarios like an indoor team, if that makes any sense. That's how I viewed it. But fascinating piece, because like I said, I imagine that could be something I would definitely add to my repertoire if I was a OC. I'd be like, yeah, I'm totally seeing how this would work in practice.
Well, for as much as we question Tate Smith in this game, you have to look on the other side of the ball, and you have to give credit to the defense. Speak English. Defense of Carolina.
Oh yeah.
Two guys I want to mention had hell of a games. One guy had six tackles, and that's Kieran Jones, who just went off on the game. Also, the vets themselves, Kenny Veal and Nick Green, got big-time interceptions. Carolina's defense, again, I don't know, it's like how Malik Henry does over in West Texas. They just play very well in West Texas. Again, is it the air? Is it the arena? Is it just West Texas? I don't know. But you got to give credit where credit's due. Carolina's defense, again, for the second consecutive time in West Texas, slow down that offense. Yeah, the first time West Texas scored 59, but you also had 86. So your offense was cooking to a couple weeks ago. But when you have a quarterback that's inexperienced in the NAL game and Shaw coming in, you want your veterans to really go out there and perform. And when you have veterans like Veal and Green out there doing their thing, that gives guys like Zach Brown the chance to sack the quarterback. That gives the guys like a Naquan Murray, who does play some DB sometimes, or a Miles Kelly. They had a chance in this game. I forgot what part of the game. It was towards the end of the game. The game was clearly already decided, and it was like an 8-minute period where the Carolina's defense got 2 stops, but Carolina, had a turnover. But you could tell what West Texas was trying to do, and they couldn't do it because Carolina's defense was not allowing it. And that was the whole entire night. And even though the stuff that Tate Smith was trying to do, you have to give credit to Coach Fuller and that coaching group in Carolina and the vets on that Carolina's defense. How they knew this could have been kind of a trap game going into San Antonio week, and they took care of business. They got the win. Now they're considered one of the hotter teams in the league. Their offense is doing very well, very explosive offense, and we've seen in the past with teams like Carolina, they get hot this time of the year. Does it run out, or do they go all the way and complete the season on a hot streak? And for West Texas, this loss does officially eliminate them from the playoffs. But one thing about teams that have been officially eliminated by the playoffs in the next couple of games, they're usually teams you don't want to play because they can ruin playoff seeding for certain teams. And the next 2 teams on their schedule are the Jacksonville Sharks and the Orlando Predators. So it's going to be very intriguing how they finish the season. But again, in West Texas, Carolina wins 66-35 in Odessa. They complete the season sweep, 4-game sweep, which is very hard to do against any team. And now Carolina gets to head back home to Greensboro for Military Appreciation Night against the San Antonio Gunslingers, which will be a crucial game that's determining seedings, home field advantage, and so on and so forth for the 4 teams who will qualify for the NAL playoffs.
First of 2 matchups in a row between those 2 as well. So, you could see this as either one team solidifies their stance. They could split, make things a little interesting. And I guess Gunslingers really benefit from the split more often than the Cobras. If the Cobras were to sweep, that's where things get kind of wacky, because at that point, they also own the season series and would draw within a tie record-wise of the Gunslingers, at least in terms of the loss column. I know that the game totals are a little off because of the 10-11, but would make things fascinating from the win percentage perspective. That is one that we will absolutely break down in much more fuller detail because of its implications. And we'll talk about those implications for home advantage, or at least home game clinches, a little bit later. Right now, though, one final game, the game you were at, we'll dive into now in a little more detail. Obviously, we gave you plenty, Jim here gave you plenty of aesthetic on the in-game experience and some of the aspects of that contest, as we'll dive deep into Sharks at Preds. Here's my thing when I was watching all this tape. Great start for Orlando. It's where, at least I thought they got out right in terms of the beginning. I just put a lot of this in terms of how the Sharks made this a quick blowout feeling, if you will. I put a lot of good defense on their plate as to reasons why this became such an out of hand contest at Amway so quickly. No one can predict that you tip up 2 straight drives, a tip ball pass interception to go for basically a 14-point swing. No one predicts that. That was great plays by defensive line. Shakai Holiness excellent job himself. Was a terror all night, whether getting his hands up, getting back in the backfield as expected. And then, of course, Tamorrion Terry, good God, scary Terry himself. Pick six, his own touchdowns. Very much, I feel like the Iron Man of the week in terms of his contributions in this one. Absolutely dominated. And you know what? Can't knock the Preds for switching up to Cato second half to get a little bit of juice. But as much as I look at Southwick's tape, I really did put just a lot of good defense at the plate. Like, I didn't think of this as QB errors. There was that pick six, which I'll admit was a little, great read by the defender, a route that probably shouldn't have been thrown there.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the other two interceptions, they were just good football. Like, it was good athletic plays. I can't even knock him for those in particular, because otherwise, once you saw like normal drives, they were able to move the ball. They just got in their own way and had great defensive plays that got in their own way. Like, that's the only pick right there, the one that's on air from Terry. That's the only one I knocked Danny Southwick for this entire contest, because that was a great break on the ball and didn't see a defender get there. Terry breaks and gets a pick six. I think with the fumble on the end zone, you saw Price also later in the first half just adds on to the compounding turnovers. Just couldn't get out of their own way. It was not the Preds' night. It was a great defensive effort by the Sharks. And, I mean, in terms of arena defensive performances, it's one of the better ones I've seen this year, if not in the last 2 years, just because defense really did dictate what the offense could do. Offense, as expected, if you can score every drive like the Sharks do, and you have a MVP candidate, if not MVP QB in Sam Castronova, anything's given and anything's possible. So, my defense solidified and dictated how this contest went. And I mean good defense, like just good quality plays, good quality athleticism. That's how I take it. I don't have anything else to say. Like I said, Preds, what do you do at that point? What do you do? I would be throwing my hands up. Like, you get a second straight pick off a tip. I'm just like, it's not my night. Obviously, I got some voodoo going on in this arena right now. Not from New Orleans, by the way. They don't exist right now.
You know how good Tamorrion Terry was?
I mean, I probably didn't even describe it well enough, but I mean, at the very least, I have to say Iron Man of the Week. Just that alone.
He was so good. Even the official NAL stats made him God mode like. The NAL stats have him having 6 receptions for 7,106 yards.
Oh, no.
And 3 touchdowns. That's godlike right there for Tamorrion Terry.
That's freaking Atlas carrying the Sharks.
Yeah. But actually, he had 106 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. And when you look at a team that is actually, again, like we said, this is not the only time that Jackson was put a complete game together and has impressed statistically. When you have a quarterback that's 21 for 29, 300 yards and 7 touchdowns and 0 picks, again, that just tells you that Sam is showing that he's right now, in my honest opinion, a clear-cut front-runner MVP. A couple weeks ago, you might have said like Arvell was in that conversation, or someone like a Malik Henry was catching up. But when you have receivers like Cam Solomon with 133 yards receiving with 3 touchdowns, and our boy, Devin Wilson, 3 receptions, 65 yards, and a touchdown. He is 3 away from the big triple digits for receiving touchdowns in his career. Jacksonville did something that you look at Orlando, go, that team 2 weeks ago and last week, where did that Orlando team go? Early in that first quarter, Orlando got that quick 4 and out, got the ball, scored. Then Jacksonville got the ball, kind of, was stumbling, and there was a big third and 8 or 4th and 8, I think. They got that first down. Then Tamorrion Terry had a corner route that he got by Dwayne Hollis, and Jacksonville took the advantage. And from that point on, you had a David Gilbert tipped interception. You had a Shakai Holiness tipped interception. 14 points off of that turnover right there. Then you had a Tamorrion Terry pitch 6. That's 21 points off of that turnover. Then you had a 4 and out followed by a Cam Solomon touchdown. That's 28 points. It was over. This game was over at halftime. When you have a performance like Jacksonville did, and usually you'll have a team that comes out in the second half, like they're going to slump and they're going to scale it back some. They did. they took the foot off their pedal a little bit. But then you had guys like Devin Wilson start showing out in the second half, and Sam was just throwing deep passes to wide open receivers. Like there's receivers that weren't 20 yards from the dude, and that's pretty, honestly shocking in the arena game because it's only a 50-yard field. Like how can you have that much separation? And Jacksonville went there for a main goal. Honestly, right now they're playing like they think they're the best team in the NAL. And by that performance on Saturday, they clearly showed it on the scoreboard that they are the best team in the NAL.
Well, it certainly feels like it. I mean, we aren't even. I mean, what? How do you slow them down? Like that's I think your greatest question right now is you have a QB that is following up what I thought was a borderline, at very least, an offensive player of the year designation he missed out on last year, and could have been I thought was one of the MVP candidates last season, to going to, what, I was let go of a situation, came into Jacksonville, and now I am looking like I am the definitive top player right now. Nothing can touch me at this time. Along with the fact that you have a receiving core that has slowly added on talents that either have been with the Sharks and have gotten better over their tenure, or of guys that have just come in and haven't had as much experience, but they have fit in the system well in their short streak. Devin Wilson, we haven't even talked to him because just there's other talents on here that are ahead and making that much impact to where it's like, it's a pretty crowded room, and in a good way. This is like the best way possible. Defensively, you either have a front 3 or 4 that gets pressure almost every other play, or you have DBs that are playing pretty solid man coverage, or at least coverage concepts to where they're making it hard for receivers to get open, and that's exactly what's going on. And like I said, I think a lot of this time I give a lot of credit, a little bit more so to the defense, because those turnovers, whether it's the fumble at the goal line, whether it's both those picks, that just made the game completely out of hand. If you're playing Jacksonville, I don't know if there's a defense good enough in the NAL that can slow them down to where it's a grind. Maybe the best one I've seen so far this season with this iteration is probably Carolina at this time, if that makes any sense, because we're thinking recent matchups. Carolina was within a score most of their contest a few weeks ago. So that's the best one I can compare to. But even then, you have to keep up with them, and you have to find a way to either get the ball first or find a way where the possession goes your way. I mean, that's how Orlando won in their victory against them earlier this year, with a different orientation of a roster at that time. This was before they got all these all-stars from the Albany releases that came over, and they basically got them through essentially just great route running and great passes that were in. This time, no mistake-free football means you're put behind the 8 ball, which means good luck to probably not going to have a chance to come back, because they play too clean. Gibson's got them playing way too, I would say, not formulaic, not militaristic, basically way too sharp at this time frame. This is not a team that relies solely on talent and just slacks on the fundamentals. Everything's lining up right now. They are to me the best team in this league. I double down on that with you. I don't have an argument for anyone else. I think the Gunslingers were the other option, but they have some questions that I want to see resolved as the season ends. And Carolina, I think you can say, has played close. They are definitely a dark horse to be one of those candidates that I would see eat in the championship, but we'll find out soon enough. I think these next 2 weeks will be a big teller on how we feel about them. But it's Jacksonville. If you're picking a de facto leader right now, it is Jacksonville. The Sharks are back fully. And I know we've said that a few times this year, but it just kind of reiterates that, coming off of a game going in with a lot of stakes and a Predators crew that's riding off of a high from 2 weeks straight of good performances.
And if you're watching me and I'm smiling, it's not, I'm not joking like Zach. I'm looking at, because I know how stats are. Apparently, Jacksonville's defense was so good that Anthony Johnson, the Jack linebacker, sometimes had 25 sacks on Saturday too. So that's how dominant apparently the stats are. I'm just smiling, but it meant to be 2 sacks. Jacksonville, from my calculation, got 7 sacks on defense. And two guys who really don't get a lot of glamour and like from this defense is a savvy vet who's been around the NAL and arena game, and Eric McIntosh, EMAC, got himself a pick in
Yeah.
the end zone, and also a rookie, Harrison Poole, who has been on and off the roster throughout the year, finally got a lot of playing time, and he got a test to go up against a savvy veteran most of the game, especially on being defense against C.J. Williams, and sometimes he was up against Darius Prince, and he held his own. He had four defensive pass breakups. So there are guys on this Jacksonville's defense this time around that are they're not the big names of the defense, but they're making plays. And one thing we've said before, not just this game and previous games and all season, especially when Jackson plays other opponents, is if you turn the football over against a Jason Gibson team, he's not going to give the ball right back to you. He's going to give it to you after you scored 9 points. And in this case, it was 28. I think they went on a 28 unanswered point streak. And if you do that in the arena game, it's hard because I went back in the stats and actually sent messages to a couple of our colleagues to see if this stat was correct. Still haven't got it, but it's pretty dang near. Out every game that's had 25 points or more deficit, there's only been comebacks. Two comebacks. And both those comebacks, they were not completed. The other teams, the team that had that deficit found out and won the game. That happened recently this year with San Antonio. But the largest comeback from behind victory was 19 points. And that was in the 2017 playoffs between Columbus and Lehigh Valley, where Columbus came back and won that playoff game. So 3.5 possessions, almost a 4-possession lead in the arena game is almost game over. Or based on the stats, it is game over. There hasn't been no miraculous comeback is going to happen. Now, when you look at Jacksonville's performance, they did most of their stuff in the first half. They ended this game early. Orlando made a change, brought in Cato. And Rakeem Cato made some good plays. His mobility kept them alive in a lot of the game, a lot of these drives alive. And he made a couple of good throws. And yeah, that's a Cato throw, scrambling, throwing to the back of the end zone, guy wide open. But there's a couple of guys I want to talk about in Orlando that watching them live, I really like. It makes me build more respect for the dudes for how their playing style is. Nick Hag is just a guy who just runs around like crazy and just constantly he just runs around like crazy, hits people, he smiles, he talks trash, he hits again, and he goes back. The guy has a never-ending motor. His motor in the fourth quarter was the same that it was in the first play of the game.
Imagine having an angry Bostonian man look at you on the turf and trash talk you.
And it was just crazy.
But not just an angry Bostonian man, an angry, very talented linebacker.
Yeah. That guy was like, man, he has a motor. Even though the score wasn't not going in their favor, he didn't quit. And that's what tells me about his character as a player. And that tells me what Herky Walls is doing for that organization in Orlando, the culture they're trying to build. And then when you look at the overall stats of the team, besides when you look at Darius Prince and his performance, again, he had like 85 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he's again another returner. He had 6 kickoff returns for 122 yards. That's good, but the 6 kickoff returns is the one that's the question mark. You got that's too many kickoff returns. If you're getting to kickoff returns, it means you're giving up 6 points. You're getting up scoring possessions. Right. But a guy who didn't have a big night was Freddie Bufloyd. I expected him to have a big night, and that gives credit to guys like David Gilbert, Justin Renfro. I forgot who the other guy that would have to go up against them. Gibby. I think Hurlong, I think is his name is, or Harlan. Harlan was the one that was in there. Jacksonville mixed up to slow down their front. Cisse was impactful early, and as his game progressed, he became impactful. Does kind of help when you have a quarterback like Sam Castronova who can scramble and keep plays alive. And again, the secondary for Orlando was really hurting them in the second half and late in second quarter. it wasn't giving their secondary a chance to make plays and get their front four to actually read the plays and make big plays.
Yeah.
Not really big plays, but stop Sam, because we've known Castronova this year. We've seen him when he played in Albany. You slow down Sam, you got to slow down one other guy on the team. That it was usually Darius Prince in Albany. In Jacksonville, you slow down Cam, you slow down Sam, you got to slow down Cam. Oh, what does Jacksonville have that Albany did not have? A Tamorian Terry and a Devin Wilson. Jacksonville has 3 receivers that are wide receiver 1, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 1. Like, these are guys who can be wide receiver 1s for any team in the league. And Sam makes that possible. And what usually comes from that is you look at the defensive side of the ball of Orlando. Brandon Fuentes, Dwayne Hollis, Jenkins, and they had an off night. The first couple possessions, it looked like it was going to be a good match, but no matter what side you stand on this, the scuffle in the first quarter between Jacksonville, where you saw players pushing each other and fisticuffs and people getting ejected, I was with a couple of Shark fans, and we were talking about this, and we really thought this is what we fans were thinking in the arena. We had this feeling early in the game that we were going to lose that game. Jacksonville did not look like they had their minds right. That scuffle got them in check. And after that scuffle, Jacksonville then dominated the rest of the game. And I was wondering, because we discussed this, me and a couple of people I was with, if that didn't happen, what type of game would this be? Again, Jacksonville's the better team right now. The record shows it. And Orlando's on a recently hot streak. But we've said multiple times in rivalry games, you throw the record books out. Something happens that really makes this game one-sided or intense affair, or something sparks it. I think whatever happened in that scuffle early in the first quarter was a spark Jacksonville needed to go, we got this. And Sam went off, Tamorian went off, Devin went off, Solomon went off. And on the other side of the field, you had Darius Prince. And that's it. Like, who else went off in Orlando?
Well, to me, I think that Prince was the main guy.
CJ had a couple moments.
Yeah, I mean, but CJ, I almost expect at this point, given what I've seen in his career with the Preds from last year moving forward, I almost expect him to be that 2 when given that chance. Caleb Walls, kind of on-off night for the most part, but he's usually been that one. Dwayne Hollis, I think he was a lot more, just my observations, a lot more, I think, busted up from the secondary play, because it felt like the secondary for the Preds got schooled hard. I mean, whether it was open field tackles like that one you see on screen here, just deep shots, not able to capitalize is the deal. And I think they're going to have to kind of regroup and say, like, look, guys, we got behind the 8 ball because of some great athletic plays from turnovers, and we just got put back on our heels. We need to just be clean to start, see how we can do it. Now, Craig, you got to go into the Shark Tank, which, to be fair, recent records would say the Preds have done all right in the Shark Tank, actually, compared to when the Sharks come to Amway, if you want to be superstitious and all that. But nonetheless, you're going to have to reevaluate and regroup the troops for a back-to-back. I am curious as to who they choose at QB, because of the fact that you did throw Rakeem in. I know that at the time that the game was going on, you're probably thinking, yeah, maybe we switch things up. But to be fair, Rakeem, a little more mobile, a guy that, as when we talked with Coach Walls, very high on Rakeem Cato.
Yeah.
No offense to Danny, but I think maybe at this point in the year, and given Rakeem's successes he had in Fayetteville, maybe that to add an extra explosive element, they perhaps switch it up to where Danny is, you have a very good backup, a very veteran guy there that's on your side, and then you have Rakeem start things out next week, maybe a little more explosive, at least more mobile against some of these pass rushers. Not to say that Danny wasn't holding his own. That line is pretty solid in Orlando, but maybe someone that can maneuver out of the pocket and get out of the way of linemen that might bat up a pass, or maybe he can open up alleys a little bit more than with Southwick, how he stays more of the the studious pocket passer to where you can open up different angles as you will. So I think some evaluate. Honestly, I think they start Raheem given his status. That's just my early predictions. But they're already locked in for the playoffs, so that could be just up in the air as to how they feel they want to end the season. So we'll see.
Also, we can't not leave this game without talking possibly the catch of the year with
Oh
Trey Long.
yes, I'm
Yes.
glad the Preds. By the way, I'm glad the Preds shared that on Twitter because I love the fact I love sharing arena catches, man. I love sharing arena catches. Trey Long, that is a give up your body type of catch. That is
Hmm.
like the definition of like an arena football highlights catch. Like you go on YouTube and you find like highlights from like the 2010s and you see like those diving passes into the stands. That's the epitome of it. I agree, best catch of the season. One of the better ones I've seen in a while. Just full send, and credit. You hope the fans are ready to go because I always say when you're on the dashboards, hey, you gotta be attentive, man. That football, those players, they fly around. You might get hit by a 170-pound, 200-pound person because they're going for the ball. They aren't worried about you at that moment 100%. That ball is more what they're focused on. You're just part of the cushioning they're landing on.
Yeah.
So be prepared and be prepared maybe hide your beer away.
Yeah. When I saw that catch, the only thing I was like, hopefully no one was under him because Jabari Gorman popped him. And
He
that's why
did.
he went over the thing. I'm like, hopefully there was no fan there, or if there was a fan there, they're paying attention. Luckily, it was right in the aisleway, so it just had stairs. But that play, it was that happened later in the game, and it really wasn't the determining factor of how the game's going to end. But Trey Long is that type of receiver that team just got that just needs a couple more practices to get gelling that will make like that type of impact like Kendrick Ings does in San Antonio. Like Orlando has a team around them. They're a good squad. They have weapons. Cato can get in there. Southwick can do a thing or two. It's going to be a chess match again. Again, Orlando has clinched a playoff spot. They have actually they secured the fourth seed. They can't really get the three. So for them, it's just we got two more games. How do we want to do this? Do we just want to start putting the guys in that we know to try to build up for that playoff game against possibly a number one San Antonio team or a number one Jacksonville in the first round? Or do we just want to go like, okay, let's just go full out. Who cares? We're get to 6-6, finish season 500, and who cares what happens in the playoffs and risk someone getting hurt probably. That can be a significant blow. But I had to say something about Trey Long. That was a beautiful
I'm
catch.
glad you did because I would have been a little upset at myself because I did actively quote tweet that one from the Preds social account. I was like, yeah, that's one you show to your friends and go, yeah, you want to know what an arena football moment is? That's an arena football moment. You don't get that in outdoor football.
Well, you do.
Absolute. I
You do.
mean,
You
you
do.
can,
But
but
if it happens, A, the quarterback is way off target, and B, why in the heck is the receiver over there in the first
why
place?
is he in the grandstand?
Yes. It just
More
it happened.
realistically, a personal foul penalty is thrown because you slam the guy into the bleachers.
True. Yes.
Whereas in
True.
this iteration, the bleachers are the sidelines, so you can't throw anything because you have to go out of bounds at some point. You just hope
True.
it's in the pads. All the refs are like, just hit the pads. If it's over the pads, they're like, all right, that's on you. That was your decision to make.
True. But speaking of week 15 coming up this week, ladies and gentlemen, the game of the week from Inside the Walls podcast is San Antonio at the Carolina Cobras. 7 p.m. in Greensboro Coliseum. That game will happen simultaneously as the game in Jacksonville, where the Orlando Predators travel to Jacksonville in the Shark Tank,
Mm-hmm.
where I will be in the Shark Tank for this weekend's game. And of course, it's Carolina. We're going to do a little thing. This live to the fans. We usually ask Patreon. We don't know. This is for everyone. Who do you want us to have on the show for Friday, NAL game day? Carolina player. Send them to us now so we can reach out to that player so we can get him on the show. We don't want to reach him out too late. We got to give him some good notice advance. Let us know who you want to get on the show, and we'll get them on. Could get a kicker, could get a quarterback, could get a defensive player. It's up to you guys. There's a couple players I'd like to get on the show, but we're going to leave it up to you guys for this week's NAL game day. But speaking also about Week 15, we've been teasing it a little bit about what's so big about Week 15. Playoff scenarios are finalized. All 4 teams are in. The field is set. Now the battle for seeding is happening. In Week 15, Jacksonville clinches a home playoff game with a win and a Carolina loss.
Mm-hmm.
The key word there, and a Carolina loss. San Antonio clinches a home playoff game with a win. Carolina has no scenario as of yet in this week. In Week 15, Orlando has clinched the 4 seed. So that is the scenarios for Week 15. Why is the top 2 so important? The top 2 seeds, the teams that host the playoff game, are 13-2 overall in the NAL playoffs. And no seed under the 2 seed has ever won the NAL championship. It's either been the 1 or the 2. So that's how big the top 2 seeds are in the postseason in the National Arena League.
Road Warriors, man. We haven't had them yet. Not to say it's impossible, but
we've had them for a round, but not the complete 2-game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
None to finish the deal. It's a little bit harder to do in this sport. But hey, I mean, for the Cobras, here's the thing. You know, if you're James Fuller, you're going into this week with your squad. You're going, hey, look, we still have that outside chance of getting a game back in Greensboro. It has to be this week that we start that process. You take an L this week, it's out. You're done. You're donezo. You're already too far behind the 8 ball. You got to you basically have to get this next 2-game streak for them is one of the most crucial portions of their year right now, because if they can draw even in the loss column with San Antonio, Week 17 is completely up for grabs at that point as to what their destiny is. San Antonio and the company are going, look, guys, let's if we can solidify that home game first, step-by-step basis right now. Get a win this week, home game lock. Keep winning some games and keep pace with the Sharks. Then we'll see how this plays out for home field advantage. But we got to take care of business this week so we don't have more distractions moving forward and more uncertainties moving forward. Because honestly, for the Gunslingers, I think this is a team that really could use that lock so they can focus on, hey, let's get this doubly right for when we have that shot at the championship, that 2-game stretch to get our NAL trophy. Let's make sure that we lock this game down, especially so that we can then more tinker and fine tune for the end of the regular season if we want. Or we go and we adjust our priorities to where we can definitively look at that home field advantage and try and reclaim it again. So a lot of stakes on the line are going down in Greensboro. Absolutely the game to watch this week in terms of, now we're in the nitty gritty. Now we're in the nail biting type of season in terms of how this will all play out. Even with the playoff teams all locked in, you're absolutely right. Home field advantage, that statistic of 13-2, it lingers heavy. You don't want to be that guy going to visit folks on the road, taking a bus trip or an airplane flight out to a venue. You want to be that dude that goes home, gets to sit back and relax at their apartment or go out with their buddies, have a comfortable week, ready to go for practices, and then you play in front of your home crowd. It's the best feeling in the world to have some guys, at least 2,000 to 4,000 on average. Well, depending on where you play, but Jacksonville, 8,000, I guarantee will be at that playoff game if and when that's played. San Antonio, I without a doubt expect easily over 3K. The Cobras, I can easily expect, I think, 3K at this point to show up for that playoff, maybe even more, because that's also been a fan base that has been slowly gathering more support this season and has been doing well under the radar comparing to the Predators and company. So yeah, you want to have your fan bases with you. It's nice. Less stress on the body, less stress on having to be away from your friendly confines of your own place you're staying at right now. A lot of stuff on the line, a lot of stuff to play for.
Also, another interesting stat. Yes, 13-2 is a record for the home teams in the NAL, but for the teams that are currently still in the NAL, those teams are 8-0 at home in the postseason. Those two teams are, of course, the Carolina Covers and the Jacksonville Sharks, who have had deep playoff runs and home playoff games since then. So, yes, playoffs are around the corner. We are down to the final weeks of the season for that. And this week, kind of ironic, West Texas on the bye week. So, all playoff teams are playing this week. So, we will have honestly, you can say, Week 15, a preview of the first round of the NAL playoffs. Intriguing.
Maybe.
Very intriguing. But for that, it's Week 14 was a blast. Trip to Orlando was a blast. Met some good people. Ate some good food. Enjoyed my time there. I had so much a good time. I had a massive migraine on the bus trip back home. Then I got home, relaxed, watched the Carolina game in its full, saw everything, and it was pretty entertaining. Now we know who the 4 teams are. It's the battle of seedings. And for that, to get more up-to-date information on the National Arena League for the push to the playoffs, visit all of our social media at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, soon to be Threads. We have to find our password for some reason, but we'll get on Threads. We've been getting people asking us to get on Threads. And of course, join NWalls Pod Plus, where you might get a special lengthy episode way before it's supposed to air on regular time. Don't know when, but you might get one. That's the joys of entering our Patreon. Go to patreon.com//Inside the Walls podcast. And of course, find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at NWallsPod.
Soon enough, you'll get that option. Yeah, we gotta find that password. We'll get that down. This is a normal thing behind the curtain where it's like, we know how to log in, and then we like spend a few days figuring out the passwords if one of us gets a new device. It's like, hey, what's the old login again? Look, it's figured. Oh, I got it, and then we forget about it. But yeah, we'll get it. We're getting a system. It's all good. But yeah, check out IWP Plus. You can P Plus. You can also search that on Patreon by finding a search with the search tab using IWP Plus, and it'll come up instantly for you as well on Patreon to help support the channel. Again, totally voluntary, but if you want to give a little extra and help support and get some extra content along the way, we'd highly appreciate it. Until next show, this Friday, check us out. Episode 119, NAL Game Day, Week 15 will be upon us. Again, preview of the playoffs, ? Maybe so. Don't be missing out on this week because these are all playoff teams. They're all going to be sizing up each other as the season ends. Going to be tinkering, seeing what works, what doesn't work. It's coming down to the wire. NAL playoffs coming up at the end of the month. You're going to want to tune in to get everything you need to know, not only on the NAL's YouTube page on YouTube, but also us here at Inside the Walls. For my buddy here, Jim Renier, my co-host, Jim Renier, I am Zach Collins saying so long. And as always, remember one final thing. Tell us, Jim, what do we need to know?
Don't be a jack out of the box.
Until next time, everybody, catch you this Friday. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Let's go. I got a vision I see in my head, a melody buried deep into my soul. They call us crazy, we cutting the edge, unlocking the future and letting it go. This is a calling that's higher the time we decided our stories are gonna be told. This is what legends are born, we paving the road, a future that favors the bold. Break the rules, break the laws, this is the moment we change it all. Break the rules, break the laws, this is the moment we change it all. Yeah, greatness, yeah, it feels like greatness. Woo! Greatness, yeah, it feels like greatness. Legendary in the making. Reach out and we take it. About to emerge, we on the verge, and it feels like greatness. Something coming, I can feel it.
Covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Kyleman and Jim Mernier.